Right now, I want to get to someone who is among those great minds to which I've just referred. He's an author, he's a lecturer, he's a historian, and he has a podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothmann. He is John Rothmann. Hello, sir.
Good morning. Delighted to be with you. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving.
It was terrific. And now to the very active holiday season politically. I was talking about Kevin McCarthy before, and John, he's talking now, at least I don't know that he's talking. I'm getting the sense that he may not be there for the full run. He may push away from the table. I'm wondering if you have heard anything like that, meaning he might give up his seat. What are your thoughts on that?
There is precedent for it. Paul Ryan, I would remind you, as a former speaker, resigned. Newt Gingrich, I would remind you, also resigned. But then you have the example of Nancy Pelosi, who continues to run again for yet another term. McCarthy will make up his own mind based on what he views as his own self-interest. In the end, the simple reality is he will be a footnote to history because he served such a short time as speaker. And now he is not really relevant, I don't think.
I'll also then ask you about somebody else who's not going to give up his seat, but is maybe expelled or removed.
Any minute now.
And that's George Santos. Now, before, I know that the conventional wisdom is that he'll be thrown out. I mean, certainly, you're looking at taking the credit card numbers of donors and using them for your, for OnlyFans sites and Botox. I mean, it's crazy what this guy was doing. And again, these are all accusations, but man, there are a lot of accusations. I mean, it's more than could, stuff any stocking at Christmas time. So my thought on him, though, that goes against conventional wisdom, maybe, is that I don't see, if you're the GOP, why you would remove him. You have a thin majority to begin with. Why would you get rid of another seat?
The House Ethics Committee report. I don't know if you've read it. It's absolutely devastating. And the Republicans don't want to carry the burden of putting up with real corruption. So it is entirely likely. I understand they have about 150 Republicans prepared to join with Democrats, and Santos will almost certainly be one of the few in American history to be expelled from Congress.
So then what happens with that seat, John Rothmann?
It opens up, and there will be a special election. I want to remind people, when you leave the House of Representatives, there's a special election. It's not like the Senate where the governor can appoint somebody. There is a special election called, and that most assuredly is what will happen.
The special election then would likely be won by, and it would happen quickly, as you say, would be won by a Democrat, wouldn't it?
Very likely. The polls indicate it is a generally Democrat-leaning district, so I would expect the Democratic Party will pick up a seat, and that is of concern. But the Republicans had a choice, and the choice is very clear. They could defend George Santos and go down defending him when, in fact, there is no defense. There's some things you can't do. One can only hope that they will apply the same standard to Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, that's exactly my point. I mean, you have a party here that was, presented clear evidence of the insurrectionist nature of the last president who was leader of their party. And they didn't respond to that evidence with any kind of vote to remove him or to. So I get to Santos. I just wonder how House Ethics Committee report or not, how they remove him. All of a sudden, you're saying he just doesn't have the political
They
gravitas.
have no choice. His own Republican Party in his own district want him out. They want him removed. I mean, everything is against him. But I have to tell you that Sanders has already announced he won't run for re-election. So, they'll have an earlier election. The Republicans will do everything they can to capture the seat. And it'll just be a fun time. I think that election, by the way, has to be held within 90 days. I could be wrong.
That's exactly right. No, 90 days is right. That's right. Yeah. That's why I asked you about it, because sort of like,
would you mind calling my wife and telling her I'm right? I mean, it would be very all right. Go ahead.
John, tell me about what's happening with the budget. Isn't it? It's really possible that this Congress can't pass a budget.
It's one of the great tragedies because of the stalemate in Congress. But if the Republicans do not agree with the Democrats, we have a real problem. And that, of course, that date is rapidly approaching. I think there will be a budget approved. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans can afford not to have a budget approved. It will happen. We'll just see all the machinations along the way. And the Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, is really on the hot seat because he has been a consistent critic of compromise. But I don't think there's any alternative here. So I anticipate, with all of the problems, that ultimately a budget will be approved. By the way, it'll be stopgap. It will not solve the problem. And, we talk about crowdfunding on your program, which I applaud and support fully. I would suggest to you that the idea the conservative Republicans had of a penny tax may make a lot of sense. To take 1 penny out of every dollar spent, put it in a lockbox, if you will, to reduce the federal deficit. It makes a lot of sense to me, and we'll see how that moves.
Well, then the deficit is run up even higher by GOP presidents. That was crazy, the last administration. I mean, you've got
right.
this,
But, every administration. I mean, I don't single out the Republicans.
No, that's not true, John. No, the Republicans, it's an articulated strategy, as you're aware. It's been written about. There's a Wall Street Journal piece from the 70s that talks about it.
Of course.
Will spend, and they'll and saddle Democrats with huge deficits.
I don't dispute that at all. You're absolutely correct. But there are practical realities. The American economy is the engine of the world's economy. We cannot afford to have a downgrade of our credit rating. The dollar is still the currency used when we judge international funding. So, I mean, the Republicans are going to have to make a choice. They can still make a campaign issue of it, but if they go all the way on this thing, we are all going to be the ones to suffer, and the Republicans will be the ones to take the blame.
Of course, you're right about that. And I think you're also right about the fact that they're going to make a campaign issue of the budget. I think that's going to be a strategy. Anyway, let's now get to the presidential sweepstakes, because I think the notable thing that happened this week, and we talked about it yesterday on the show, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it, is the very high profile movement of institutional GOP money in the form of Koch brothers money to Nikki Haley. It's a lot of money, and they are following that with, street teams essentially to get the Nikki Haley name and support out there in different states. She trails Trump by so much, John, and Trump is all about small donor money. Give the devil his due. He's captured this cult-like support, and they're sending him dough. But the real GOP institutional big money doesn't like Donald Trump. He's bad for business. And so the Koch brothers go for Nikki Haley. Go ahead.
The Kochs have never backed Trump, not in any of his campaigns, not in 2016, not even in 2020. Look, push come to shove, what happens in Iowa is going to be very important. As you know, the leader of the religious groupings has now announced his support for DeSantis. And Nikki Haley took a big hit with that. It would have been good if she'd had that support. I will wait and see. But if Trump is able to win in Iowa, and all indications are that he will, and if he then wins in New Hampshire, and again, despite Chris Christie's surge in New Hampshire, and remember, Christie is not a real factor in all of this, if Trump wins there, and then comes South Carolina, and let me tell you, that's for Nikki Haley Armageddon. Why? Because she is the former governor of South Carolina. She should be the odds-on favorite, but all the polls in South Carolina indicate Donald Trump way ahead, and most of the Republican leadership has already committed to Donald Trump. So for Nikki Haley, there are a lot of hurdles to overcome, and there's one other hurdle, and that is people really exploring her record. Let me tell you, this is a record that is clearly attackable, if you will, from the Democratic point of view. And from the Donald Trump point of view, he's more attuned, he believes, to the Republicans than she is. So this is something we'll just have to see. I hope, I know that in your discussion about Liz Cheney earlier, and I can't wait to read her book, the odds of Liz Cheney running are extremely limited. She has no strength within the Republican Party, and it would almost be a futile gesture. So I don't expect that to happen. Although I was talking with a friend of mine the other day who said, well, if they nominate Chris Christie, the ideal nominee for vice president would be Liz Cheney. So there's an interesting, anything can happen in politics, and I look forward.
Chris Christie ain't getting into the Oval Office again unless he's on a tour. I just don't see it. But
I agree. I'm just giving you a speculation.
Yeah, but no, it's fun. It's fun. I agree. And I talked the other day about Nikki Haley being. She's a real right winger. She's about tax cuts, but where she comes across as moderate, and even in our chat, you notice it, and people spark to the fact that on cultural issues, which have become so important, and essentially, with fiscal irresponsibility and an inability to really legislate, you just talk about cultural issues. You talk about, the gays and whatever it is, the, political correctness and cancel culture and this sort of thing. And those are real issues, but the reality is they're blown way out of proportion.
She's way out to the right.
She's way right. But on the cultural issues, she seems more moderate.
No. Let me be very clear on the question of a woman's right to choose. She waffles and says you have to accommodate, but she's really pro-life. She's always been pro-life. That is her record. She does not compromise on that. She's just trying to sound more reasonable.
She is a political weather vane. You're right, John. She speaks to the room.
Yeah.
All right, now to the Middle East. There was, first of all, this terrorist attack, they think, on the part of these Iranian hackers. When I say attack, again, it's nothing exploded. They hacked into, they feel anyway, that it was likely backed by Iran, this water system in Pennsylvania. We talk about our infrastructure being vulnerable, and then you look, at this trail of breadcrumbs back to Iran. I wonder if you could speak to that, and then I'll get into the broader issue.
Well, it goes to the issue of cyber warfare. You and I have done programs on cyber warfare. It is a great danger. The next world war will not be a war fought with armies. It will be a war fought with computers. And we now understand the vulnerability. And let me point out that America's infrastructure system is extremely vulnerable. We understand that. You don't have to watch a movie like War Games, purely fiction, but which could, in fact, be a foretaste of what might happen. These are very, very serious issues. And one of the questions you have to pose is, what is the United States doing in terms of prevention of cyber attacks? And that is something that we will have to be accountable for. I am very concerned about what happened. By the way, if it is as low grade as is indicated, imagine if a terrorist organization or a foreign adversary decided they really wanted to make this happen. We might be in deep trouble. And so I think this is a warning bell for all of us. It's the yellow light flashing, and we sure as heck better take it into account.
Well, I always feel as though the degrading of many of our intelligence services through monies that are being directed to, military contractors who are building,
it's crazy.
Essentially, these World War II instruments of war. When I really,
you and I both advertised for C. Crane Company for the CC radio, and I advise everybody, have a portable radio with you. Don't count on being able to get the latest updates from your computer. Everything can crash. And sure. I think that is a very, very serious issue for all of us to engage in. And we'll have to see how this plays out.
The policies now become more complicated even than they were in the past. I see the Middle East backdrop, hostilities, hostages taking, atrocities being committed, then military incursion into Gaza, so many innocents killed. That backdrop, if I can just say it, is being used by many on college campuses, on streets across the country, to make political points and also good old-fashioned anti-Semitism. You're seeing tremendous rise in anti-Semitism in this country, and I know it's an issue that you've spoken about before.
And Chuck Schumer this morning, the Senate Majority Leader, delivered a powerful, compelling statement about the rise of Jew hatred, not only in the United States, but across the world. He is the highest ranking political official who happens to be a Jew. And he described something I didn't know about him, and that is the experience of his family in the Holocaust. I mean, there is no doubt that Jew hatred is big. All you had to do was listen to the Oakland City Council meeting or the Hayward City Council meeting, which I talked about on my own podcast. The manifestations are genuine. And I have to remind people, the thing that's most disturbing to me is when we talk about occupied territory, what they are speaking about by their own words before all of these bodies is the occupation 75 years ago, meaning 1947, 1948, meaning Israel. And people have to understand this is a serious issue. And I'm glad Chuck Schumer addressed it. I don't know that there's an easy solution. But what I can tell you is that the Jewish community in this country is deeply concerned. And if anyone listening to the sound of my voice drives by a synagogue or a Jewish community center or a Jewish cultural center, you will see policemen in evidence. And that is across the United States of America. And that's stunning.
Yeah, it's truly sad. Albert, do you have a couple of seconds of the remarks from Chuck Schumer on the floor of the Senate today?
I rise in this chamber today. I am speaking up to issue a warning informed by lessons of history too often forgotten. No matter what our beliefs, no matter where we stand on the war in Gaza, all of us must condemn anti-Semitism with full-throated clarity wherever we see it before it metastasizes into something even worse. Because right now, that's what Jewish Americans fear most. The spike in anti-Semitism we're experiencing right now in America began after the worst instance of violence committed against Jewish people since the Holocaust. The vitriol against Israel in the wake of October 7th is all too often crossing a line into brazen and widespread anti-Semitism, the likes of which we haven't seen for generations in this country. I rise in this chamber today.
Okay. So I want to ask you about legitimate criticism of Israel, which you have done. I mean, I think that, you have not been complete. You don't back everything. You don't just rubber stamp everything that's done by now.
Over the years.
Yeah. So, and on this show, you've been critical. Oh, how do you tell? I mean, obviously, people breaking into a synagogue, defacing a synagogue, beating up Jewish people, attacking Jewish people. These are all clearly, anti-Semitic acts. How do you distinguish between criticism of Israel, as I've said, you've done it before, and anti-Semitism? Is it a proxy, I guess is what I'm asking. Is it a proxy for Jew hating?
Let me be clear. Since Hitler, you cannot be against Jews. And so very often the term anti-Zionism is used. Frankly, there was once upon a time a difference between anti-Zionism and Jew hatred. But those two have merged. All you have to do is listen to what goes on at rallies, the pro-Palestinian rallies. It's appalling. And the darn thing that bothers me more than anything else is the deafening silence from those who have been allies to the Jewish community. Many of my friends who are involved in interfaith work say, well, we don't want to talk about the Middle East because then all these issues come up. And frankly, Jew hatred becomes genuine. You people, that's the kind of thing that you get. I have never been afraid, Mark, of speaking out, whether we were on the radio or whether we're talking to you on a podcast or whether I'm giving talks around the country. There is legitimate criticism of Israel. If you don't believe me, just read the Israeli newspapers. They are so critical of their own leaders. But I can tell the difference because, frankly, if it quacks like a duck and waddles like a duck and looks like a duck, the odds are it's a duck. And it's not just on the right, it's on the left as well. And I want to point out to you, we talk about the squad, and one of the very deep concerns among some about the Democratic Party. Let me remind you, the Republican Party had its Pat Buchanan, its Pete McCloskey, its various members who also assumed those stances. And so what we have to do is to be able to be clear and careful. But may I ask, and I implore people this, one of the greatest things that has happened to me in all of this is the number of emails I get from non-Jews who say, John, we understand the position. We appreciate your concerns. we stand with you. And I think that's the thing. Many Jews need reassurance from their neighbors that they are welcome. May I be blunt, Mark? We had graffiti just 2 blocks from my house that was horrifying, deeply disturbing. And a neighbor of mine sent me the photos of it, and then I went down and took a look before it was removed. Or if you want to take a look at what happened in Mercer Island, Washington, at the Herzl Synagogue, you can Google it. It's astounding. But it's that kind of thing that Chuck Schumer is talking about. And believe me, having been on the radio as an identifiable leader in the Jewish community who received tons of hate mail, some of you will remember the Jay Weekly did a feature on Ron Owens, myself, and Michael Krasny as leading Jews. This is before you were part of the San Francisco Bay Area community, by the way, Mark. And we revealed the kinds of hate that we received. And that was a time when it wasn't directed against Israel per se. It was directed against Jews. And I think legitimate criticism of Israel, I welcome. I offer it myself. But when one attacks Jews or the Jewish conspiracy or those people, you have to have your antenna up and understand how difficult it really is.
Well, it's a disturbing time in the world for Jews everywhere, I'd suggest. And as I say,
take a look at Europe. Take a look at what's going on in Europe.
Exactly.
I mean, and you know what really scared me, Mark? I don't want to take this. We have so many things to talk about. But when Jews are told, take off your Stars of David, take off your yarmulkes, remove the mezuzah from your door, all of a sudden you have to stop and think, where am I? Am I in the United States of America? I mean, I am, but that's something everybody has to know. Every Jew must consider carefully.
Well, it's interesting. Ricky says religion destroys reason. I mean, you can, I don't think the anti-Semitism, I'd suggest respectfully, in the main, is religious. I mean, understand that the identified party that's being hated on is Jewish, so you could say, well, it's religious. But the religion, it's not like another religion against the Jews. If this anti-Semitism seems to be coming from all quarters, I mean, it's
You're
not
right.
Yeah,
Your analysis is correct, and it comes from the left and it comes from the right, and we need to understand this is a problem, and that's why Chuck Schumer today, standing in the United States Senate, expressing this sentiment, absolutely hit the nail on the head. It is very, very dangerous. And, well, all I can say is we hope that people will see what the danger is and address it in their communities.
Indeed. He is the great John Rothmann. You can find him on the podcast that is daily, Monday through Friday, called Around the Political World with John Rothmann. John, we love our time with you. And I think, is this my last visit with him before the end of the year? It'll be you next week, right, Kim? Talking to John, and then
Are you taking time off?
I'm taking a vacation that I don't want to take, John. I do not want to take the vacation. I'm being dragged away by my other half.
Let me assure you of one thing.
What is that?
When you are not there, it is my great honor and personal privilege to be able to spend time with Kim McAllister.
She is terrific. I love my Kim McAllister.
Kim, how are you?
You know.
Chit-chit.
Yeah. Chit-chit-chit.
Chit-chit-chit.
Yeah.
But the good news is you have one more, because next Wednesday is December 6th. So
good.
you get
So I
one
will-
more John
okay.
Rothmann
So we
conversation.
visit one more time. Yeah.
I'm so relieved, but Kim, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to spending all that quality time with you.
Me too.
Wow,
Yeah,
look
ditch
at
that
that.
guy over there. Let's just
Man.
you and me talk. That's right.
Yeah. Kim and John sitting in a tree. All right, I'll talk to you
Chocolate
next week,
cream
John
pie
Rothmann.
between you and me.
That's right.
Bye-bye, John
Bye.
Rothmann. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.